Hey everybody, my name's John Kelly. I'm the youth pastor at Wested Assembly of God, and I'm so happy to be the one to be able to share devotion with you today. So we're going to be looking in Mark chapter 14, verses 61 through 62. So let's read it and then talk about it. Then the high priest stood up before the others and asked Jesus, "Well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself?" But Jesus was silent and made no reply. Then the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven." Before we go directly into this, as you look at Jesus' life, there are a lot of constant themes that you see. For example, one of them is you see a theme of Jesus being a servant leader, always willing to push his message forward by serving others, by loving others. And one of the other themes that happens throughout Jesus' ministry is a theme of being confronted and how to face that confrontation. Now, confrontation comes in a lot of different ways, and normally it's based on the setting of what's happening around. And in some of these situations, you could say it was a little easier to face the confrontation because he had a bunch of people around him that loved him. It's much easier to face confrontation when you can stand up and say something knowing you've got a crowd of people around you to maybe keep you safe. The consequences might not be that bad. So there were moments like that, but then there are also moments where it was a little more questionable. And this is harder when you're not sure what's going to happen if you stand up and say what you know is the truth and that it might make some people mad and you don't know what's going to happen afterwards. But then the hardest situations are like this. Jesus is put in a moment where he knew that if he stood up and he said what was true about him, what was true about God, then he was going to face some consequences that were horrible. And those are the hardest moments to stand up to confrontation. And so when Jesus says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven," these are the words that were used against him to have him crucified. And he knew that that would happen. But he said what was true still the same. And he tells the disciples constantly that you're going to face times of trials. You're going to face moments that are hard, where it's hard to stand up to the confrontation that you're going to receive, but to be firm and to trust that God's going to be there for you and that he's going to provide. But I do want to say that there's a difference between being confident and being confrontational. And I love that about Jesus, that he set such a great example of being confident in who God was, in who he was, but at the same time wasn't confrontational with it. So he would speak the truth and then take the consequences no matter what they'd be, but wasn't out just picking a fight. But if the fight came to him, he'd speak the truth and then he would take whatever happened from it. And for him, it was dying for us because he knew that it was the best thing to happen. Now in it, you might be wondering, well, how can you do that? How can you stand up and be confident in something when maybe something really hard would come afterwards? And maybe you've had these situations where how can I be confident in my faith and who God is and what he's doing in my life when maybe it's going to mess up my job, or maybe it's going to mess up what this person might think of me, or maybe it's going to close a door in my life. Like, how can I do that? And again, Jesus has an amazing moment when he prays to God in the Garden of Gethsemane and he goes, "Please take this cup of suffering away from me, but God, I want your will to be done more than mine." And for him to be able to say that is showing that he trusted God. And maybe there might be some things for you, and I know even for me, where maybe I just don't trust God enough to be confident. do you really believe that God loves you? Do you really believe that God's got a purpose for your life? Do you really believe that he can comfort you, that he's compassionate, that he's forgiving, he's graceful? Do you believe that he's got a vision of your life further than what you're facing and feeling right now? As you understand more and more of who God is, you can start to trust in him, even when you know the situations you're facing are going to be hard. And so that's exactly what Jesus was able to do. He was able to say, God, I trust you. I know who you are, and I know who you are in my life, and I know who I am because of you. And so I can say this knowing that, trusting that everything will be great because you're great. So think today, what do you need to be able to trust God a little more, to be confident in who he is, not only just on his own, but who he is in your life? And as you identify that more and more, you're going to be able to confidently live your life, glorifying God and seeing him working in your life, even through the moments where it's painful and it's hard and difficult, because God's greater than any of that. I hope you have a great rest of the day. I hope we see you soon.